Welcome to the Election University podcast, a weekly show where we hear from industry experts who share tips and tricks for winning campaigns. Whether you're running for office now, thinking about it for the future, or just want to know more about campaigns and elections, Election University is for you. With Election University, click, learn, win. And now your host, Jason Bennett and Rainey Cohen.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Rainey. How you doing today?
I'm pretty great. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing well. Excited for today's podcast interview. We are going to be speaking with Congressman Keith Ellison, who is the congressman from the 5th Congressional District in Minnesota, but also is the deputy chair of the Democratic National Committee.
Yes, he is. And we took Election University on the road for the first time today to go talk to Congressman Ellison, and hopefully you all will think it was as big of a success as we think it was.
Yeah, zero technical difficulties.
Nope.
So I was pretty excited
Knocking on all the wood there.
Yeah, exactly. First time we've had to disassemble our recording studio and take it on the road. So I'm pretty happy with the result. Yeah, so as Rainey mentioned, we're going to be taking Election University on the road. So today was the first of a many-part series of recordings that we'll be doing remotely. This week, we went out into suburban King County here in Washington State to participate in what the Washington State Democrats are calling an organizing academy. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in a second. But then next week, we're going out to Nashville, Tennessee for the American Association of Political Consultants annual conference and Poly Awards ceremony. So we're very excited about that. We have some great interviews set up for that trip as well.
Yeah, lots of people who have expertise in lots of things. And, normally we have to do these interviews over the phone. And obviously it's much more fun to see a person face to face. So I'm pretty excited to talk to folks face to face who maybe we would have only had the option of talking to them on the phone otherwise.
Exactly. So we've got some great interviews lined up while we're over there. We're going to talk with United Postal Service about mail and whether or not it actually is coming back and having a resurgence, or if it's a dying art form of politicking. And we're also going to be talking with phone vendors. We're going to be talking about whether or not phones are still persuasive and when they're best used.
Robocalls, right? Not like volunteers phone banking?
Well, a little bit of both. Okay. I think what these people are, they're phone vendors. So they provide the capabilities where you can do mass volunteer phone banking, or they do the robocalls, or they do telephone town halls. They do lots of different pieces of telephony. I don't know. Is that what it's called?
Probably. Let's say it is.
I'm going to make up words. And then we're also going to be talking with some folks about IP tracking and how you're leaving your stamp everywhere on the internet and how you can use that and harness it for campaign purposes.
Oh, man.
I know. Further inserting terror into people.
Exactly. All of our listeners. But for today, enough about the future. Today, we got to have a conversation with Congressman Keith Ellison. As you've already said, he represents Minnesota's 5th Congressional District. The 5th District includes the city of Minneapolis, and the surrounding suburbs, and is one of the most vibrant and ethnically diverse districts in all of Minnesota.
Yeah. And we went out to speak with Congressman Ellison about our today's topic, which is really about maximizing the blue wave and what Democrats need to be doing in terms of messaging to help put their best foot forward. We, are seeing some great energy on the ground, not only in last election's Virginia blue wave, but also in Alabama when we flipped the U.S. Senate race to Doug Jones. We're seeing it in 41 legislative seats across the country, and many of them in deep red areas that Trump won. And, we're hoping that momentum continues for the midterm elections. So this November as well.
Well, and part of maximizing that momentum is the reason why these organizing academies are even happening. The state party in Washington instituted kind of a new, fresh organizing model where they have full-time organizers year-round rather than just during a election cycle. And to build on that, they recruited hundreds of people showed up to the organizing academy they had last night, and then the second one that they had today, to learn how to do that on the ground voter contact, face-to-face conversations. And that is why Deputy Chair Keith Ellison is in Washington State today.
Right. And in Washington State, we have two great opportunities to flip some seats. One of them is a red to blue seat in our 8th congressional district with retiring Congressman Dave Reichert. And we've got some great Democratic candidates who are battling it out in the primary right now. And so this training was organized to help train those activists into being better, on the ground, grassroots volunteers and
to flip districts.
And to flip districts, exactly. So, the goal was to learn, the core organizing skills needed to communicate with voters and help persuade and flip districts. So I'm really excited for our listeners to tell us what they think about this interview.
Yeah, it was a cool conversation.
It really was.
For it?
Yeah, I'm ready. So let's get into it with Congressman Keith Ellison. All right. Welcome, listeners, to the Election University podcast. We are very excited today. We have Congressman Keith Ellison here with us today.
Hey, good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. What brings you to the rainy Evergreen State?
Well, you guys have a wonderful Democratic Party here. I really mean that. I mean, Chairman Tina is just really kind of a model for what we would hope a state party chair would be. And over the course of this weekend, you had two great trainings, one on the University of Washington campus and one out here in the suburban communities. And so, I was glad to be part of both. And, we also did other stuff. We talked to the progressive table, not just Democrats, but folks in, Flippable, Indivisible, Our Revolution, and the wider progressive community. And, we talked to students, talked to young people. We talked to the Muslim community yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so, we're just really doing political engagement and organizing because, you can't just come around election time and hope that people will believe in you. Right. We've got to be a party that's there for people all the time.
So for the folks who might not necessarily be familiar with the DNC.
Democratic National Committee.
Right. What is the work that you do and how far down the ballot do you spend time and energy?
Well, let me tell you, the Democratic National Committee changed its mission statement. Our mission statement used to be that we elect a Democratic president. And we've changed it to be that we elect Democrats up and down the ballot. The core job of the Democratic National Committee is to make sure that the rank and file Democrats are as well trained, well equipped, and as highly inspired as they possibly can be, so that no matter who comes out of a primary, they can expect to get the support of an on-fire Democratic base.
Right.
And that's what we do. So we do training. We support state parties. We give financial support to state parties. We help organize them. We help make sure that they have technological upgrades. And that's kind of what we do. So the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, they represent Democratic House.
Right.
The DLCC, they represent state legislators. The DSCC, they represent Democratic senators. Right. DGA, which Jay Inslee's the president of, I think, they represent the governors. Right. But the DNC represents the rank and file. We represent the average Democrat who goes to work or is retired or is in school or something, but just believes in the principles of our party of economic fairness and human rights and civil rights and human respect for everyone. They believe in those ideals and they just need a party to help organize them so we can advance our values at the ballot box and throughout the community all the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of our listeners are down ballot candidates.
Oh, yeah.
And does the DNC ever weigh in on races that are maybe nonpartisan, but it's pretty obvious that it's a D versus R kind of situation?
That's a good question because our officers have pledged that the Democratic National Committee will not ever engage in a primary. We support the Democrat after a primary. But if you look at like a lot of municipal officials, those are nonpartisan races.
Right.
So, we're really now building our relationship with an institution called the DMO, which is the Democratic Municipal Officials. Historically, we really didn't engage that much with them, and that's something we are turning around. Under Tom Perez's leadership, we believe in fighting down ballot. Our mission statement is to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. And we've gotten involved in a lot of municipal races, but usually it's pretty clear who the Democrat is by that time. So like we fought to help the Democratic mayor get into office in New Orleans, in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Fayetteville, in Cincinnati, in Atlanta. We're fighting up and down the ballot, but we want to make sure that we're not fighting against Dems. We're fighting only for them.
How would you describe the Democratic Party after the 2016 election?
Right after?
Yeah, up till now.
Well, it's changed, right? Mm-hmm. So right after, people were shocked, demoralized. We all just knew Hillary was going to win, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, anyone knew that. Everybody knew that. Well, that didn't happen. Right. So there was a period of shock and grieving, and then there was a period of reflection, and then we had a pretty robust chairs race. Mm-hmm. Tom won. I came very close, but I'm glad to support Tom as the deputy chair. And other people who ran, some of them joined as officers doing other things. And because we all had a common understanding that, the Democratic Party is the only party that has enough national reach, depth, name recognition, and infrastructure to truly oppose the Trump agenda. Mm-hmm. Other parties are around, and I don't hate on them. You've never heard me speak ill of any third party, and I won't now. But I think it's a fact that they don't have the depth, reach, and name recognition to be a truly effective opposition to the Trump agenda, and we do. So, I wanted to be part of that. And so after the Women's March, which I think inspired everyone to a tremendous degree, the day after that inauguration, and it was the Women's March, and they just lifted the spirits of every progressive thinker across the nation. And after that, you had the Science March, you had the Tax Day March, and then you had the kids, the immigration activists, really working hard and inspiring everybody. And then you had the Parkland kids who just are just making everyone feel that, tomorrow can be better than today.
For sure.
And so because of that, the Democratic Party, we've been organizing, we've been devoting our energy to make sure that all this progressive energy gets converted into the ballot box.
Yeah. So, you're here on day 2 of these organizing academies where hundreds of people have shown up over the course of these 2 days. Yeah, it's incredible to see. Do you think that energy is harnessable into like a blue tsunami going into the 2018 election, or are we expecting more of a trickle?
I am very optimistic. I think we're going to do really, really well. But the reason I'm excited about the Citizens Academies and this training effort that's going on is because I think that, look, just outrage against Trump is going to motivate some people to the polls. Mm-hmm. If you look at these things historically, no matter who the president is, the president in power usually loses a lot of seats in Congress. The president's party usually loses a lot of seats in Congress in their first term. Now that doesn't even have to do with Trump. That's just a pattern. But I feel that we have got to fundamentally change the way we do business, or we're just going to go back to status quo in 2020. What we've got to do is reconnect with the grassroots. What we've got to do is say, look, we don't campaign based on just big fundraisers and television ads and mailers and data analytics anymore. We believe that the most important unit of production is the relationship between the party and the people, the party and the person. Mm. We've got to make Miss McGillicuddy know that there's a party who will kick down doors and drown a drop of water to protect her Social Security. Right. Who's going to fight for her grandson to get an affordable education, who's going to make sure that her daughter can go to the doctor and get the health care she needs, and who is going to have somebody fighting to make sure that the water's drinkable and the air is breathable, and that if she lives in a coastal community, that she doesn't live under, her home won't be underwater.
Right.
So this is people need a party, man.
Yeah.
And they need a party that they have a relationship with, not a TV party, not a mailer party, not a party that, kind of looks at some sort of algorithm to decide whether even to talk to them, but a party that cares about them, on a human level. That's the kind of party we're trying to build.
What are we doing to communicate to them that this is the party for them, and let alone, or, that, and make them believe it?
Well, communication is obviously there's a lot of ways to communicate. The most important way to communicate is through strengthening state parties like the Washington State Party, and people know it because they have a well-trained, well-equipped, highly inspired volunteer at their door talking to them about the party, inviting them to participate in the party. That's the first point of communication. But beyond that, we are upgrading our communication technology all the time. So we have something called Democrats Live, a weekly live broadcast program. We're upgrading that. We're increasing our scope and our reach. A lot of state parties have podcasts that they're doing. Mm-hmm. We're encouraging more and more of that. Our chair and myself and others are on the network news a lot. But I want to just tell you this. It's funny you should mention communication because, in my opinion, it is one of the foremost challenges of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Because we are structurally at a disadvantage, and I think there's no use in acting like we're not. I mean, here's the deal. The Fox News acts like the communications arm of they act like they're have an office space in the RNC or something. They just repeat whatever Trump and the Republicans want, and they pound on it. They act like they're on retainer or something, or they're actually employees of the Republican Party. And then you got St. Clair Broadcasting, which is trying to get a monopoly which does the same thing. Then you got Breitbart, which is even to the right of Fox News, and they're dedicated to subverting representative and constitutional democracy in favor of some sort of a national chauvinist type, model. So the net effect of all of this is that they have structural advantages that are built in now. Mm-hmm. The Democratic Party and progressives generally have to think about this. And I think there's a two-pronged approach. One is we got to stand for aggressive antitrust legislation. No way that St. Clair ought to be able to reach out to 70% of the American people. Yeah. That's a monopoly. It shouldn't be allowed to exist. It's anti-competitive. So we need to make sure that media is not too big, and we got to make sure there's competition in the industry of media. The other thing we have to do is we just have to generate more ways to communicate with people. That's why I got my own podcast. It's called We the Podcast, and I enjoying people to listen to it. You can get us on Stitcher and what's the other thing?
iTunes.
iTunes. iTunes for sure. You can get us there. It's called We the Podcast. But I'm trying to tell Democrats to start a podcast. You guys, what you're doing right now is super helpful. But you ever saw that movie Dunkirk?
No.
So it's a cool movie, and it's about a historic event. And what happened was that in the movie and in real life is that Winston Churchill found that the British were getting defeated by the Nazi Germany forces, particularly the ones that were stationed on the coast of the French coast. And so because they didn't have enough boats, military boats, to get their people from the French coast back to mainland of England, they asked anybody, if you had a rubber inner tube or a rowboat or a pleasure craft or whatever, to go over to the channel and to bring British soldiers back to the mainland. That's what we got to do as Democrats.
Right. Yeah.
We got to say, look, if you got a Twitter account, you got to use it to communicate. You use whatever you got to get the word out, because they have institutional structural advantages communication wise, and we've got a lot of making up to do. I believe that the DNC should broadcast from the basement of the DNC every day.
Yeah.
We're working on that, but we've got to communicate every day. When you think about the communications advantage, I mean, not to mention they got the White House nowadays, which is the biggest megaphone in the country.
But it's also message discipline too. Like, we're just not good.
True.
We rolled out a better deal, which was our version of the New Deal earlier this year, and you don't really hear many candidates talking about any of the pieces of that very vocally.
You hear him talking about the pieces of it, but let me just put it to you let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. Remember the whole thing about release the memo? Mm-hmm. Okay, when the memo came out, it was not much of a memo, was it? But you heard about it everywhere.
Right.
because they were talking about it on Fox. They were talking about it on St. Clair. They were talking about it on Breitbart. They had their army of bots talking about it. They had their army of Russian trolls talking about it. And we actually thought it was like a real news event. It was never a real news event. They just used their coordination and their communications apparatus to create an echo chamber, which we thought was like a real news event, and it never was. It was always just a faux news event because they have the power to create that. Whereas we got real news events and we can't sustain them. We are structurally at a disadvantage in communications apparatus because we believe that the media is just like this fourth entity, and they have said, oh, we're going to own the media ourselves. Right. And that is what has happened. And we still don't get it. We still believe that when Fox gets on and does a story, that it's some sort of it's news just from a conservative standpoint. No, it is people. I mean, look, Roger Ailes was a Republican movement activist. There's no getting around that. It is a verifiable, demonstrable fact. Is there some Democratic movement activist who owns MSNBC? No, they're business people and they're trying to get a return on investment, period. So we are at a structural disadvantage. We don't seem to realize that. And, but many of us at the DNC are trying to change it. But we're trying to tell the rest of the Democratic family that this is the deal. And so we do need antitrust legislation, and we need to find more ways to communicate with the public. And we need to understand that when you don't hear Democrats speaking on issues that you find important, it's not because they lack courage or because they don't have message discipline or because they are too dumb to know what to say. It's because structurally they have set up a system that allows them to say boo, and then you got 1,000 points saying boo, where we might say E equals MC squared, something that's true and actually somewhat profound, and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Democrat, I feel like I am screaming at the top of my lungs and no one hears me, because the only reliable, way to get the word out is through like C-SPAN or something, go on the House floor and say something, or my Twitter account. But, Trump has about 28 million people followed him. I got about 360,000, and I got some of the most in the House of Representatives. So, in terms of just getting a message out, he tweets and it's news for sure. I tweet, maybe it is. So my point is, and there's only about 4 or 5 people in the Congress who got more Twitter followers than I do. Bernie has a lot. Elizabeth has a lot. Yeah. Cory Booker has a lot. Nancy has a lot. But, we are at a disadvantage. So we can come up with the best message you want. But then if you get some people to say, oh, it's a dumb message, then everybody says, well, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting through, but I would urge you to investigate what I'm saying. Yeah. It's a verifiable thing. And, we need more outlets. Now, in terms of message discipline, I agree we can do better at that. But what's the message discipline of release the memo? Right. I mean, think about this. Kevin McCarthy admits on national television that the only reason they set up the Benghazi Commission is to push down Hillary Clinton's numbers. Hillary Clinton goes to the Congressional Oversight Committee and answers questions for 11 straight hours. Do they stop saying, oh, Hillary killed the people in Benghazi? No. They keep it up. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is another topic that I think I'd like to share with you. Democrats have yet to really understand that Republicans have weaponized smear. Mm. They've literally So is Michael Dukakis, is he against public safety?
No.
Is John Kerry a coward?
But should we do the same? I mean, are we just
I don't think we need to do the same, but I think one thing we can do like right away is if Republicans say something bad about a Democrat, it ought to be immediately suspect. So you remember there used to be a woman named Shirley Sherrod, right? Mm-hmm. She was a leader in the Obama Agricultural Department. They put out a tape implying that she was racist against white farmers. In fact, she was giving a speech saying the exact opposite. And the farm families she helped, who were white, came forward and said, no, this lady helped save our farm. But do you know that Obama's fired her?
Right.
under Vilsack and Obama, they fired this woman, said, oh, you did something racist, so you got to go. She said, no, I didn't. They doctored the tape. And then we're all embarrassed. And then Breitbart gets up and says, we never were saying that she was a racist. We were we were messing with y'all. And you're suckers enough to go for it. And so, like, there is no Democratic equivalent of Michael O'Keefe, right? You know who this guy is? Yeah. He's the one who took down Acorn. He's the one who tried to take down Planned Parenthood. So my point is, we don't do what they do. I don't think the answer is do what they do. I think the first answer is understand that if you get a Republican saying that some Democrat is not nice or did something wrong, it should be immediately suspect and probably dismissed. It's probably a lie. And it all starts with a guy named Lee Atwater. Lee Atwater said famously, by the way, Lee Atwater was called the Babe Ruth of negative campaigning. He is the forefather of people like Karl Rove. Lee Atwater died at a young age. He said, look, in the South, us Republicans couldn't win on the issues. So we had to make the public think that the Democrat was a bad guy. And so they came up with a strategic decision to simply smear people. And we have yet to really catch on to that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. So they get up there and they say, oh, Nancy Pelosi is bad somehow. And we're thinking, oh, well, is she? Of course she's not. They're saying it because she's our best fundraiser. She's a prolific campaigner. And if they don't take her out and make us doubt her, then we're going to beat them.
Right.
So, but we don't get that.
Right.
We go ask, oh, is Obama really a Kenyan? Maybe. Where's it? Where is his? You had Democrats literally saying, well, shouldn't he just show his his long form birth certificate and that would end the matter? It would not end the matter. And all you'd really do is bow to these people. Anyway, I think I've talked too long.
No, you have not. But final question. So we want you to talk to your state representative run self. Talk to the candidates who are thinking about running for office. What advice would you give yourself before you announced for state rep?
I would say go in a room, close the door, get a pencil and a piece of paper. Ask yourself why you're running. If your answer to yourself is not something like, I have a burning passion to serve people and to improve opportunity for Americans all over this country and in my district, then don't run. But if that is your answer, you must run. You absolutely must run. And it doesn't matter whether you have a good chance, whether you have enough money. It doesn't matter whether you're straight or gay or trans or black or white. It doesn't matter whether most of the people in the district are of a different ethnic group than you. It doesn't matter if you got an accent. You run because the heart knows the heart. Mm-hmm. And if you go to those people, and they might all be African Americans, and you're white. But if you want to help them and make their lives better and make sure their kids got a future, you run. That's what Steve Cohen did in Memphis, Tennessee. He's a white man. He has a 65% black district, and he wins because he kicks butt for those people daily. My district's 75% white. They vote for me. I'm telling you, there's a trans woman by the name of Danica Rome who won in Virginia. Now, if you were to go to conventional wisdom Democrat, and campaign official and say, should Danica Rome win? Oh, the smart people, what would they say? Oh, of course not. They're never going to elect a trans person. Well, Danica won anyway. Right. Thank God she didn't listen to them. But Danica didn't get up there talking about trans. Danica been trans her whole life. That's not news to her. Right. So what she talked about transit and roads. Yeah. And guess what? Other people were more interested in driving down a road that was safe and good than worrying about her sexuality. And she beat somebody who declared himself to be the number one homophobe in the Virginia state legislature. Right. So my point is,
there is justice.
There's justice. There's justice. Run hard, and talk to people and understand that it's more important for you to be door knocking and being at a community meeting than it is for you to be at some high end fundraiser. Not that you don't need money, because you do. You absolutely do. But you don't need more money than your opponent. You need enough money to work your plan. Yeah. So understand that. And, look, public service is a noble profession. We need to elevate it by putting our whole heart into it. And just remember this too. there is no dishonor in not winning. You will do a lot of good by drawing more people into the process, speaking up on issues that are critical, and don't do negative campaigning either, because you can do contrast campaigning. You could say, look, I'm the only one who's for $15 minimum wage. My opponent doesn't agree. And your opponent will have to say, yeah, it's true, I don't agree. But don't ever go do negative campaigning, meaning try to besmirch character and tear people down. That's a Republican game. We shouldn't do that, right, even if it'll help you win an election. I see I'm out of time.
Yes.
And I just want to say,
Congressman, thank you so much for your time.
Anytime, and good luck to everybody.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. A huge thank you to Congressman Ellison for taking time out of his busy schedule today to speak with us. What a great interview. What'd you think, Rainey?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of abrupt ending, right?
Yeah.
But super appreciate that his staff was able to make room in his schedule to talk to us. And it was, lessons learned from being on the road, right?
For sure.
Is time management.
Yeah. And we've been staffers. We appreciate that when you're
totally
back to back to back,
I've been that person who's like, stop, shut up, not one more question. So totally appreciate the position that people were in today.
He was doing the Indivisible podcast before, so then they whisked him away to do a video right afterwards. So I'm glad that we got the time that we did. And I think the discussion was really important because for me as a Democrat, I've been a lifelong Democrat. I have invested so much sitting, listening time in my Democratic organization meetings, hours and hours spent fighting over bylaws, changes, and whatnot. And I have such anxiety about this year that I just feel, God, are the Democrats really maximizing this opportunity? Are we really all marching to the same drumbeat? Are we all on the same page? Have we resolved the 2016 factions that are dividing us and we're all linked arm in arm to really ride this wave out? And I don't always feel confident that that's the answer, but you're sitting across from Congressman Ellison. It's hard to feel anything but optimistic and hopeful about what's going on. And I think his perspective on the messaging was really, really helpful. Just understanding some of the structural disadvantages and being very clear that they exist and not being apologetic about pointing them out or highlighting them is important. And I think he did, a pretty good job of addressing my concern, which is message discipline, and making sure that Democrats, when they are on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, that we're talking about what we're going to do for the voters, even if we don't believe that the structural advantages are there necessarily for us. Every single candidate needs to be saying the same 5 points that Democrats stand for.
Well, and I think that another way to, distribute that message is through exactly what these organizing academies are supposed to be doing, which is mobilizing folks on the ground. He talked about the grassroots and it has to be here in the face-to-face conversations. And, you have an organizing academy like this for message discipline, right? Where you're telling people, here's how you effectively communicate. And at least here in Washington State, I think we saw evidence today that there's a groundswell. And while we have some congressional districts that we can probably flip in this state, we still need the people who are going to put the time and effort into reaching the voters who just want to know that any elected official is on their side.
Right. Exactly.
And I really appreciated his advice about running for office. Sit yourself in a room, in a closet by yourself, and just, if your reason is not because I care about my community, because I want to make a difference, then don't run. But if it is,
you must run.
Screw everything else. You must run.
Right.
Figure out how to do it. I don't know. I was all inspired.
I know. We could listen to him for hours. It was
really
excellent.
Great advice. Yeah.
I do want to take time to thank our listeners and supporters who provided questions. We had done another little teaser ahead of time and asked our listeners and supporters for questions that they wanted to get answered because of the structured nature of this interview and the quick timeline that we had to turn this around. We weren't able to get to some of those questions, so we apologize for that. Please know that we are bookmarking that, and if we get the opportunity to ask, Tom Perez at some point or some other DNC leader, we will definitely ask those questions. It's on our mind, and we will do everything we can to get that done for you.
Yeah.
So listeners, what did you think? We would love your thoughts on today's podcast. What did we get right? What did we miss? We also would love your feedback. So head on over to iTunes if that's how you listen to us and leave a review. Give us a rating. We love those 5-star ratings.
Oh, yeah.
We definitely love to interact with our listeners and love the feedback that you're providing us. It provides a better quality of product here, and just know that we appreciate it. Until next week, you're going to be hearing from us in Nashville.
Yay.
I am Jason Bennett, your co-host.
And I'm Rainey Cohen.
Also our
co-host.
Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you for listening. This week's episode has ended, but the campaign fun doesn't have to. Head on over to www.electionu.com, where you can access all of the links mentioned in today's episode, as well as the show notes. There you can also sign up for regular announcements or register for our campaign school. It's your very own online personal trainer for winning campaigns. www.electionu.com. Click, learn, win.